Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the massive protests that are shaking Iran to its core. We're going to look at what's happening on the ground, how the regime is hitting back, and what the rest of the world is doing about it. And we're going to jump right in with this really chilling message from a medic in the city of Shiraz. I mean, just one sentence, and it tells you everything you need to know about the brutal reality of what's happening and the real human cost of all this. So, to really get a handle on the scale of all this, we're going to start where the impact is, most raw and visible, inside Iran's hospitals. And believe me, they have been pushed to the absolute breaking point. Okay, so we've got word from a doctor, someone who managed to get information out of the country, that Farabi Hospital, which is Tehran's main eye center, has been completely thrown into crisis mode. And think back to that medic's message we just saw about head and eye injuries. Well, this is exactly where that pressure is hitting hardest. And you have to stop and think about what this really means for a second. It means routine medical care just stopped, halted. Everything, and I mean everything, got diverted to handle this flood of emergency cases pouring in from the streets. It's a perfect snapshot of a healthcare system that is just completely overwhelmed by the violence. And this isn't just a Tehran problem, not by a long shot. Hundreds of miles away in Shiraz, you're hearing the exact same story. They just don't have enough surgeons to treat the wounded. So what we're looking at here isn't some localized issue. No, this is a full-blown nationwide emergency.
All right, so let's zoom out from the hospitals for a minute. What does the bigger picture look like across the whole nation? Well, the numbers we've managed to get, they paint a really grim picture.
We're hearing from human rights groups that at least 50 protesters have been killed since these demonstrations kicked off. And it's so important to remember, right? These aren't just numbers on a screen. Each one represents a life lost in cities all across the country. Now, those same groups are also reporting the deaths of 15 security personnel, so it's really clear that the violence is claiming lives on both sides of this conflict. And on top of that, as part of the official crackdown, the reports we're seeing suggest that more than 2,300 people have been arrested in the middle of all this unrest, a huge number. But here's something that is absolutely crucial to remember when you see all these figures. The Iranian government has imposed a near-total internet blackout. That makes getting reliable information and verifying it extremely difficult. So these numbers we're talking about, this is just the stuff that has managed to trickle out. The real figures could be much, much higher. Okay, so you have this massive level of unrest. The big question is, how is the Iranian government actually talking about it? What's their story? And how are they responding to the protesters? I mean, just look at the contrast in language here. It's stark. On one side, you've got the Iranian authorities calling protesters armed vandals and saying they're committing terrorist acts. Then, on the other side, you have the UN talking about the fundamental right to demonstrate peacefully. The gap between these two ways of seeing the world, it's just enormous. And if you want to understand the regime's position, this quote from the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, really says it all. This isn't just a statement, it's a declaration of intent. He's framing the government's very existence as something sacred, something bought with blood. And that means any opposition isn't just dissent, it's an existential threat. One that he makes very clear will not be tolerated. So with all this happening inside Iran, how is the rest of the world reacting? Let's take a look at the international response to this escalating crisis. You've got a lot of voices, from the UN to the big European powers, and their message is pretty consistent. It's one of caution. They're urging the Iranian government to respect the right to peaceful protest. But then you have the United States, and they've taken a much, much sharper tone. Yeah, this quote from then-President Trump is, well, it's about as far from typical diplomatic language as you can get. It's a direct, totally unambiguous warning shot to the Iranian leadership. And a statement like that, it just dramatically raises the stakes for everyone. And, predictably, this has ignited a full-blown war of words. You've got Iran blaming the U.S., saying they're turning protests into violent, subversive acts. And the U.S. State Department just fires right back, calling the Iranian foreign minister delusional.
What we're really witnessing here is a total breakdown of any kind of normal diplomatic communication. So all of this, it brings us to the one central question, doesn't it? With all this pressure building up, both inside the country and from the outside, where does Iran possibly go from here?
Honestly, the path forward is completely up in the air. You've got influential voices offering wildly different takes on what these protests even mean and whether they could actually lead to real fundamental change.
And you can basically see two competing visions for the future starting to form. On one hand, you've got Reza Pahlavi, a major opposition figure, who's telling protesters to escalate, to seize city centers. But on the other hand, you have a very experienced diplomat, Sir Simon Gass, who's basically saying, hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. He points out that there's no single organized opposition inside Iran for people to really rally around.
So, okay, a clear leader might be missing. But what seems to make these protests different is just how widespread they are. This disaster to the economy has pulled in a much wider range of people. We're talking about folks driven by the simple daily struggle to make ends meet. For so many of them, this has gone way beyond politics. At this point, it's about survival.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, right? You've got this massive population fueled by pure economic desperation and deep-seated anger. And they're up against a regime that has drawn a very hard line in the sand, one that is absolutely refusing to back down. So as this all plays out, the entire world is watching and waiting to see which of these two powerful forces will win out in the